We're looking at the Abraham Accords Declaration. I did a video just a little bit ago talking about the conflict between Israel and Gaza, or the war. And it turns out that the Abraham Accords, which is kind of a multi-pronged attempt at peace in the Middle East, is at risk if somebody doesn't solve this conflict. So we're going to take a look at what the Abraham Accords is and why it might be important. The Abraham Accords Declaration. We, the undersigned, recognize the importance of maintaining and strengthening peace in the Middle East and around the world based on mutual understanding and coexistence, as well as respect for human dignity and freedom, including religious freedom. We encourage efforts to promote interfaith and intercultural dialogue to advance a culture of peace among the three Abrahamic religions and all humanity. We believe that the best way to address challenges is through cooperation and dialogue, and that developing friendly relations among states advances the interests of lasting peace in the Middle East and around the world. We seek tolerance and respect for every person in order to make this world a place where we can all enjoy a life of dignity and hope, no matter their race, faith, or ethnicity. We support science, art, medicine, and commerce to inspire humankind, maximize human potential, and bring nations closer together. We seek to end radicalization and conflict to provide all children a better future. We pursue a vision of peace, security, and prosperity in the Middle East and around the world. In this spirit, we warmly welcome and are encouraged by the progress already made in establishing diplomatic relations between Israel and its neighbors in the region under the principles of the Abraham Accords. We are encouraged by the ongoing efforts to consolidate and expand such friendly relations based on shared interests and a shared commitment to a better future. Just a very brief history about what's going on here. Uh, the reason that this is called the Abraham Accords is that the three major religions in the Middle East, Judaism, Islam, and Christianity, were all descended from Abraham. They were three completely different sects of religion that came from Abraham. And all three of them believe that Jerusalem is, and the surrounding countryside is the Holy Land. All three of them, that is their Holy Land. And so for thousands of years, they have been fighting to see who gets to live on what they think is their rightful land, because it was given to them by God or by Allah or by Jehovah. So that's, I think, originally where this conflict started. And here we are today. So I took a look at the agreements that were made in between all of the countries involved. And I will put links to these if you want to read through them. Essentially, all of them are saying that they are willing to live in peace with Israel, who is currently occupying Jerusalem and the Holy Land. And that part of that movement toward peace is that they are going to engage in mutual arts and science and technology and trade. So just quick look through each one of these. So there was one that was made with Bahrain, the Kingdom of Bahrain. There was one that was made by the Kingdom of Morocco. There was one that was made by the United Arab Emirates, and one made by Sudan. And all of these were orchestrated by President Donald Trump. So what I did was I took a look at where each of these countries are in relation to Israel. And what I found is that each one of them seems to have a pretty strategic location in the Middle East that would be really good for strengthening trade for whoever it is that is controlling those lands. So The first one is this country of Bahrain, and it is a teeny tiny little island country, and it is inside the Persian Gulf, where in relation to Israel, it's way the hell over here. So between Israel and Bahrain is Jordan and Saudi Arabia. So it could be a really strategic country to have if you want to have trade, because look at right here. If you kind of want to come into the main city here, you sort of need to go through Bahrain. The next one that I took a look at is this Kingdom of Morocco. And Morocco is over here on the Atlantic Ocean, and the Mediterranean Sea. So Israel's over here. And again, Morocco is the one place. Look at that. Look at that. The Straits of Gibraltar. That is going to be necessary if you're going to do trade with the West. So if you want to do trade in America, you're going to need to come in through here, right? Or you could do trade in Europe by lands, but if you want to do trade over here in America or in Canada or in South America or Central America, you're going to need to come through Morocco. So it is extremely advantageous to have Israel have a strategic partnership with Morocco. Then I took a look at the United Arab Emirates, which is really not that terribly far off from the country of Bahrain. And again, the United Arab Emirates, it kind of has this little property right up here. So if you want to have trade through the Gulf of Oman and the Persian Gulf up to Israel, you sort of need to have permission of the people who are like kind of managing that coast. So that is also a strategic partnership. And let me just tell you, I don't know this for sure. I'm learning alongside you. But the way that I see it, it kind of looks like these Abraham Accords are trying to develop relationships with people and strategic trade routes. And then we have did I do this one? The United Arab Emirates. Oh, I did this one here. Yeah, that's there. And then Sudan. So Sudan. Oh, that is, I did them backwards. But anyway, two different maps, same thing. Then they also have made an agreement with Sudan. And I think that Egypt is fairly well allied with Israel at the moment, although they are not at all interested in taking any of the Palestinian refugees, nor to Saudi Arabia. But look at, those would be the two most obvious places to put. So this is the Gaza Strip up here. And so if you were going to displace an entire, there it is right there. If you were going to displace an entire people and not leave them in Israel, then the two most obvious places are to send them to Egypt or to Saudi Arabia. Sudan is also a country along the Red Sea, which could potentially be a trade route. So I'm thinking that might be part of the reason that this is in the Abraham Accords. But again, don't quote me on this. This really is all speculation that I've just done because I'm doing a little bit of digging. As I was looking into this a little bit more, I did find this Canadian policy on key issues in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. And I think this was dated back in 2010. So this was quite a little bit ago. But it really does talk about that even, in 2010, there were already Palestinian refugees that were sort of settled in Gaza. But then Israel has occupied Gaza. So Israel has had control over who comes and goes from Gaza. The medical aid, food, all of those things have been controlled by Israel. And ultimately, that's kind of been the crux of this conflict at the moment in modern history, is that the Palestinians are being occupied by Israel. And Canada, for example, does not recognize permanent Israeli controls over the territories occupied in the 1967, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, the East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. And then I do have the West Bank here as well. The West Bank is, I think it is technically Palestinian, but I think it's being occupied by Israel right now. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. But it's just a hot mess right now in all of these places. So in order to figure out what exactly was going on here, and the Gaza Strip is right now, President Trump has been, where we are in history at this moment is that President Trump has offered to simply take it, not to buy it, not to conquer it. It just simply is. Like, he speaks it into being. Like, it's mine, and therefore it is. But it isn't, because there were people there. But it is also really interesting that he even, like, it's explicitly has said that he wants to turn it into the Riviera of the Middle East. Because look at this prime waterfront property. Interesting when we really kind of go back and take a look at all of these, whether it's trade routes or not. If you're just simply looking strategically as real estate, all of the countries that are in the Abraham Accords have prime waterfront property. Morocco is on the waterfront. Egypt, Saudi Arabia are on the waterfront. Sudan is on the waterfront. United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, and Gaza, the Gaza Strip. I took a look at some trade routes, and this was dated from 25th of June in 2024. And there are two competing trade routes that are attempting to be built in the Middle East. One is called the Development Road Project, and the other is the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor. I'm not going to read the whole entire article, but I will link this if you're interested. While U.S.-China competition spurs nearshoring and decoupling, some countries in Asia and the Middle East are still optimistic that globalization has a future. This is no clearer than the two new trade routes designed to cut across the Middle East: Iraq's Development Road Project, DRP, and the India, Middle East, Europe Economic Corridor, or IMEC. They are competing visions of regional geopolitics and trade dominance, one cemented around Iraq and the other around the Arab Gulf region. But they share the ambition of taking advantage of a more politically and economically fragmented world. That's interesting. They share the ambition of taking advantage of a more politically and economically fragmented world. But the question remains, are they economically viable? The DRP has already smoothed political tensions between Iraq and Turkey, the route's two main proponents, but its visionary $17 billion in US dollars infrastructure demand is highly ambitious in terms of costs and will remain contingent on Iraq's stability in the coming years. IMEC builds on some existing relationships, but the political challenge of ensuring the route runs smoothly between the Middle East and Europe through Israel will be one of the greatest roadblocks to the project's success. Still in design, IMEC and DRP share a common goal of becoming the primary East European trade corridor and enhance the geopolitical importance of their members. At present, the IMEC's capacity to ship volume of containers to Europe greater than that of the DRP. Even with enthusiastic members like China and likely China's backing for the DRP, both routes face serious challenges that will likely delay their development and completion. So let's take a look at both of these. So the DRP is a trade route proposed that would go through from the Persian Gulf, through Iraq, up around Syria, and then through Turkey. I will have to do a little bit more digging, but both of these trade routes avoid Syria So I'm thinking that Syria is not a viable option for trade, which is too bad, really, because that would be the most obvious trade route through Iraq. The IMEC corridor takes a different route, and it's a little bit harder to see because the water and the land are very close in color on this map. But this takes from India, goes up here through either through the Persian Gulf or through the Red Sea. And both of these, by land and through sea, have to go through Israel, and then, of course, by water up into Europe. So it is interesting to me to take a look at what is going on in the Middle East and to recognize that so much of what is going on, including the peace talks, are not even so much about having peace in the Middle East, but might really be much more about money and power, about real estate, and about shoring up alliances that make trade more economically profitable for the people who are allied with the lands that are necessary to make that trade happen. So that is just a little bit about the Abrahamic Accords. I'm going to link all of these things if you want to read more about any of these things. The video that I started with talks about how the President Trump's current efforts to displace the Palestinian peoples, either to Jordan or to Egypt, and neither of them has said that they're interested in that at all. But that to make a power move like that is threatening all of the work that he did back in 2020 in making these peace talks happen and these agreements happen. So we will just wait and see. I don't know where this is going to end, but I'm not feeling super optimistic that this is going to end well for the Palestinian people. That being said, I'm snarky positivity, which means I always end on a positive note. And the positive note is this. When Hamas attacked Israel and Israel fought back, the initial narrative that was being given out to America was that Palestine had attacked Israel and Israel was simply defending itself against the attack. But very, very quickly, the Palestinian people in America spoke up and said, that is not what is going on. Israel is not the victim here. And the fact that not only did the Palestinian people speak up, but other Americans started to see what was actually happening there, and they started to speak up and stand up for the Palestinian people. So I think that the positive news here is that information being shared and a willingness of people to stand on the right side of history is making it less likely that the Palestinian people can simply be genocided with no consequence. People are just not going to stand for it. And I really like that about this world where social media makes it impossible to ignore the things that are going on in the world. As a little aside, and this is not a positive thing, but a very not a positive thing, the TikTok ban, which was signed by President Biden and passed through the Congress and then signed by Biden, went from nothing at all to being introduced as a bill to being passed through the Congress to being signed by President Biden in 8 days. It has never happened before that a bill was introduced, passed, and signed into legislation in anything even remotely close to the 8 days that it happened. Those 8 days happened to be in the very, very early days of Israel starting to attack the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And what was happening is, really for the very first time, Americans were seeing in real time via TikTok what was actually happening in Palestine. So the legacy media and the governments could no longer control the narratives because we could see it. We could see it was happening. And immediately the American government shut down TikTok. because they didn't want us to see what was happening there. So that's a little aside. That is not my positive note. That's like a very not a positive note. But I remain positive that there are still a lot of people who are willing to stand on the side of justice. So we will keep fighting. If you like this content, please subscribe. I'm working to build up my subscriber base. I'm Snarky Positivity. Okay, bye.